Rece Davis joins us now, of course, the host of College Game Day. And Rece, it's been just some 20 minutes or so since we got news that the Big Ten is postponing its fall football season. What was your reaction to this major announcement?
I wasn't surprised, as Kirk and others have said at the beginning, because it had been percolating the last couple of days, even though it was just not too long ago that they had released a schedule. So the question was, what changed? And if it is indeed medical information, then it's incumbent on the Big Ten to share this medical information with the population at large, not just in sports. Because if they're not playing because of myocarditis, which I'm not a doctor, that may well be a reasonable thing. But if that is a risk, then why are we playing Major League Baseball? How are we going to play the NFL? Why, if anybody gets infected in the NBA bubble, then, how is it safe to do that as well? We need this medical information for everyone to evaluate. There are other doctors who look at it differently. The ACC's head of the medicine talks about that it's possible to play a football season safely. How do you weigh that information against the information that has apparently led the Big Ten to this decision? So, I'm interested to hear this. I want to know what that medical information is, and if it's the wise thing, then that's great. But the independent nature of each conference making these decisions and not necessarily seemingly coming from a place of collective information is a little bit frustrating.
Rece, I think I understand the answer myself, but a lot of people have asked this question that we're just 23 days away from the originally first scheduled game of this Big Ten Conference. Ohio State and Illinois on September 3rd, I believe, was the date. But why now is one of the questions that I've often heard, is that why did it take this long to make this decision? And if we still have 23 days, why are we postponing at this juncture in time?
Well, I think it's because, number one, I think all of these people are trying to protect the players in their charge. I don't doubt that for 1 second. But I think that the start of practice in pads probably bothered some people, and they didn't have as long a runway as the conferences who have chosen to start in late September. And I know the Pac-12 chose that also, and they are likely to follow suit and postpone or cancel as the Big Ten has. So I think it was because they were getting up against a time crunch. I don't know if there could have. I keep hearing, that they could have gathered more information in a few weeks. Maybe not. If they have this, the medical information about the potential cardiac ailments that could be the result of this novel coronavirus, then I want them to share it with everybody. And I think a couple of weeks wouldn't have made any difference, and they made the wise move.
Herbie, I want to get back to you because I know the announcement was made just today, but as you and Des and Rece have all said, you weren't surprised by this because there was a lot of momentum towards the possibility of the Big Ten postponing its season. And maybe this is an impossible question to answer at the moment, but for right now, where do these coaches go with their programs? It's August. They're normally gearing up for games. Now they may not play games for 5 or 6 months. What's next for them?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. I think that from folks I've talked to, I think September and October and November and December become training. Going back to what the normal month of June would be, where you get some they're probably going to talk because of these rare conditions. They'll probably talk to the NCAA, talk to the Big Ten office. Hey, can we do a little bit more as far as training and developing than we normally would do? Can you take off some of the the restrictions that you would normally have on us, because we're in a situation we've never been in, and we want to coach these guys and help them develop instead of just losing the months, the fall months. So I think that's probably being talked about as we speak about what the schedule will look like. I do want to say just one thing to add to what Rece was saying. Because you have a son, Rece, at Duke and plays baseball, and I don't know if this has affected him, but my boys are at Clemson, and Clemson had about 40 players initially they tested positive. almost all asymptomatic. But two of my boys, their roommates, had tested positive. They weren't positive, but they were put on the sidelines. They could not go to the facility. They were quarantined for 14 days. No questions asked. They were fine. They were quarantined because of direct contact tracing, direct contact. And therefore, I was picturing, as I listened to my boys talk about that, how in the world can we have a season if contact tracing is going to come into effect for these teams? What Iowa might do versus what Wisconsin is doing versus what Michigan's doing versus what Ohio State's doing. How in the world would we be able to figure out, because players are going to test positive, how in the world could the coaches and the doctors figure out who's eligible to play and who's not based on 1 or 2 or 3 positive tests because of the contact tracing? That, to me, would be a very, very difficult thing to manage when you're not in a bubble and you're relying on people to follow the rules and the ethics of, I mean, you know, how to 6 feet for 15 minutes, that you're deemed as contact tracing. How in the world do you follow that, right? So I think that had to add to this as well.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.